Hello everybody, it's me, Kirk Mastin from Mastin Labs, joining you here today to talk about matching film with digital and how to get those beautiful film looks for your digital files. I'm going to let this event get loaded up here in the group. I want to make sure it's all working. Yes, it is working. Cool. Yeah, so today we're going to be covering a few things. I just disappeared down my stairwell there. We're going to be talking about matching digital and film together. So the reason that Mastin Labs exists is that I wanted to find a way to get my digital and my film work to be consistent. When I was delivering to clients, I really love shooting film. That's what I started on a long time ago, even shooting for newspapers and magazines with film. And then digital came, and I made that transition along with everybody else, and digital was awesome. It allowed me to do so much with my files, and it felt like it was free. However, later I learned that film still made me a better photographer. I had to conceptualize, to visualize the photo in my mind before I shot, and that made me slow down and really dial in my photography. So fast forward many years later, I created my own presets by reverse engineering a Fuji Frontier SP2500 scanner that I bought from a film lab. That was where I got all of my film developed, and that was the look that I loved. So over time, I started creating my own tests for measuring color and for getting the exact same looks that I'd get from that Frontier. I wanted to get those looks in Lightroom. And that is how Mastin Labs was born. A friend of mine said, hey, you really should try selling these. And I thought, who would want these? They're not like super over-the-top heavy filters that seem to be really popular right now. They're very subtle and light. And I thought, no one's going to want them. But here we are in 2018, and it appears that people do really like this style. Thank God. And things are really good. And now I am here 8 years later to teach you how I match digital and film together to make my digital images look like my film images. And today we're going to be using actual test images that were either sent to me by photographers in the community or ones that we created in-house with our own set of photographers. So some of these images you might have already seen on the website or elsewhere. Some of them will be new. But it's a great way to show some of the different presets and how you make your digital images look like actual film, like 100%. Not looks like film, not kind of looks like film, not inspired by film, not like I think film's cool, I touched a film camera once. This is like actually literally identical to film. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to give this like another second here to get going. I'm going to turn on my little comment thing down here so that I can actually, there we go, actually see your comments. If you have any questions at all during this entire process, please send me a question in the comments and I will answer it. I will try to answer every single question. I'm going to give this like 2 more minutes before we start, or maybe 1 more minute before we start, because I started just a little bit early. And yeah, where are you guys from? If you're watching, where are you watching from? We are in Seattle, Washington right now. It's a beautiful fall day. We're going to be in Cologne, Germany later this month for Way Up North, where I'll be speaking on business-related stuff for your photography business. So maybe we'll meet some of you there. Who knows? I hope so. And we'll also be at the ARC conference in Vancouver, Canada in October. We're also going to be at a conference in Atlanta. And I don't know, there's always a conference coming up. So we will see you from all over. Hey, Christine Park. Thanks for joining us from Georgia. Ah, but you're in Texas. Okay, cool. Go Longhorns. Isn't that what it is? It's like that? I don't know the difference between like the devil, the satanic sign, and like the Longhorns. Let me see. Is it this? You're from Texas.
That's right.
Is it this? But is it also the satanic sign, or is it?
This.
That's the horns, like for the Longhorns.
No, that's Satan.
This is Satan. Okay, what's the Longhorns one? You don't know. Okay. God, we really got off track there. Okay. So today it will neither be about Satan or about the Longhorns in Texas. Although I love Texas. So, all right, let's get started. So in this class, we're going to be talking about in-camera decisions that you need to make so that you set yourself up for a filmic image. We're also going to talk about using Mastin Labs for matching those images. So if you wanted to get, an exact match, we'll go through those steps. And then I've got some tips and tricks to share with you, and I'll also be answering any of your questions. So one of the main things that we see come up again and again in our community and elsewhere is this debate over how should I expose for Mastin Labs. And I wanted to tackle this one first because this is really important for anyone. I believe anyone using any presets or not using presets, it doesn't matter. But here's the deal, everybody. The way that you expose the image, and I just want to hammer this home. I want this tattooed on everyone's forehead. The way that you expose the image does not have a final effect on whether or not you get a film-looking image. It does not. It does not. Just repeat it to yourself right now. It does not matter if I under or overexpose. All you're doing is messing with how much, maybe a little bit of highlight retention or noise in the shadows if you really underexpose, both of which are bad. Both are bad. You don't want to blow out the highlights, and you don't want noise in the shadows. So the answer, the final answer, if I had a Bible of Mastin Labs or any truly good film preset, is expose normally. And that's why I'm starting off with this slide right here from our one and only Jordan Baker, who's probably on an amazing road trip right now because he's always traveling. But we had this debate in our community, again, for like the 14th millionth time, because some people are like, oh, you've got to underexpose to get that film look, or you need to overexpose, or whatever. So Jordan just, I don't know, I think like during mid-discussion, he was probably outside. He took this picture of his friend, 6 stops exposure difference, okay, 6 stops. So took this picture, the correct normal exposure out of this is the one that's labeled 1/1000. So his light meter said 1/1000 at f1.6 at ISO 50. Then he just changed the shutter speed dial. He went up to 1/2000th of a second, 1/4000th, and 1/8000th. So that's 1 stop, 2 stops, 3 stops overexposed. Okay, you guys following me here? And then he went the other way down to 1/500th of a second, which is 1 stop underexposed. Oh wait, I'm going the wrong direction here. He went 1/500th of a second is 1 stop overexposed, and 1/250th of a second is 2 stops overexposed. And the top row shows 3 levels of underexposure, all the way from 1/2000th to 1/8000th of a second. God, I butchered that. Basically, it's the same damn image shot at the same exact time within seconds. He applied. Let's see, what did he put on here? I don't know. It looks like Mastin Labs, like Fuji 400H, maybe from the original pack. It doesn't really matter which one. Then he applied the same white balance, and then he tweaked the exposure slider in Lightroom, and that is all, until they all look like the one that says 1/1000th of a second. And guess what? They're identical. They're identical. They are the same. There is no secret magic sauce in how you expose. So keep that in mind. The only thing that's different is in the one that's overexposed 2 stops, the highlights in the upper left were a little bit blown out in the photo, and the one that is 3 stops underexposed has noise in the shadows, increased noise in the shadows. Both things suck. The moral of the story is, like the whole purpose of this rant, expose normally. Just do that. No matter what preset to use, expose normally. The raw file that you get out of your camera, you can take that anywhere you want. The real look of film comes from the way the colors shift, the way the micro contrast is handled. So that's, micro contrast is like that kind of 3D pop effect without, it's not like the clarity slider all the way up. It's a way of like using contrast and shadow and highlight detail retention together to give you kind of a three-dimensional look, and it's exactly how film works. Those two things make it look like film. And then what we consider to look like film these days, which actually has nothing to do with film at all, is like that super blurry depth of field. That's just shooting wide open on any camera. And then the two kind of predominant popular styles right now are light and airy and dark and moody. Where do those come from? They come from either shooting backlit, meaning you're shooting with your subject. The subject is creating their own shade by facing you with the light behind them. So you are exposing for the face, which means you're actually overexposing the background, okay? So look behind this girl, see the leaves back there, everything's a little bit kind of pastel and light. That's because it's being overexposed to get the proper exposure on her face. That is light and airy. That is light and airy, if you've ever wondered. What is dark and moody? I think it's so funny we split everything in this dichotomy, like it's either this or that. But in general, backlit is light and airy. Dark and moody is actually shooting in dark and moody light. For example, my friend Ryan Muirhead, he shoots, he would probably be pissed if I called him a dark and moody photographer, because he really is his own photographer. He does his own thing. But he shoots a lot by windows inside. And what that does is you create this really big contrast difference between the darkness of the room and the window light. And that kind of more stark, it's still soft light. It is still soft light because it's coming through a large light source on the right or the left, like through a window. But it's going to a very dark place. And that is kind of the beginning of dark and moody. You can also get that by shooting towards, you know, like late in the day, sunset, just in a place that's dark and moody. There's no preset that will make it dark and moody. It's the quality of light you shoot in. That makes it dark and moody. And also the way the model is dressed, what they're doing, all that feeds into the emotion of the photo. But a lot of dark and moody is shot indoors with some kind of window light in general. And light and airy, shot outside, backlit. So I hope that is interesting. We've got a whopping 16 viewers right now, so these are usually viewed thousands of times later, but I promise you there's going to be some good nuggets in here. All right, so to get that film look, in a nutshell, if you're going for the bright and airy look, shoot backlit, expose for your subject, choose an aperture that's really wide open, like f1.6 or f2.5, somewhere around there, like wide open meaning that the lens, the diaphragm of the lens is wide open. That's what creates that blurry background. If you're shooting at f16, you're not going to get that film look that people like. Or if you even have your camera set on auto aperture, most of the time the camera is going to like have you shoot a 5.6 or f8 or something, and you're not going to get that shallow depth of field. So this is the foundation of the film look that people are expecting. Yeah, if I shot film and shot it at like f11 and didn't overexpose, I bet a lot of people would be like, oh, that's digital. Because we've just associated these things with film. So those are the main things. Shoot wide open, backlit, expose for your subject. If you're shooting dark and moody film look, find a big window, a big light source inside. Make sure all the other lights are off so you're not mixing like tungsten light with window light. You'll get a nice, much cleaner picture, much better skin tones, even with dark light. And that will set you up for success. Those are the only in-camera decisions that you need to make. So I'm going to move on to actually matching film now, and we're going to go through some of our photos. So we were just in Hawaii, and we released a new pack called the Kodak Everyday Pack, and it's got Ektar 100, which is a very vibrant color negative film that looks like slide film. So in that sense, what does slide film look like? Slide film in general is very colorful, very contrasty. There were some slide films that had a more desaturated, cooler look, but Ektar is trying to kind of emulate another film called Velvia that Fuji made, which was like the king of saturated slide films, and it actually had a really cool look. It's really nice for like tropical locations, things like that. So it was perfect for the shooting that we did in Hawaii. I will show you an example here. So we're going to go into the, so there's a view that you can go to here where you can see a reference photo and a photo that you're editing. So on the right, I've got my digital file. This is from a Sony A7, maybe A7 II, I believe. And then I'm going to put another photo on the right. I'm going to grab an actual Ektar photo, and I will compare them for you, and you can see. I'm going to grab that, and then I'm going to grab. Let's see here. Grab that, and I'm going to go to Reference View. Oh, come on. Oh, I got too many photos selected. All right. Yes, I am so proud of myself there. Okay. So we've got the film photo on the left side and the digital photo on the right. On the second try, I picked a Canon photo. It doesn't really matter. The presets that we make are now universal, so they make the exact same look on any camera, which is great. And basically, the way that you use Mastin Labs, like I said, you want to just expose normally. You'll notice that none of our test photos are like extremely overexposed or extremely underexposed. We may have a few that were shot accidentally over or under, but we would never use those to test with because there's no need. So on the right side, the digital photo, we're just going to apply Ektar 100. And that's our base. So what that did is, and I got to hide all this stuff. Sorry, everybody. I can't show you everything because then you could start reverse engineering, and that would not be cool because this took years to make. So when you apply the film base, what that does is it shifts all the colors in general to the right spot. It creates a micro contrast, and it creates the highlight shadow retention that matches that specific film. So you'll notice that they don't match quite yet, but that's because the white balance isn't set right. But I just applied Ektar 100. I'm going to go to temperature and tint and adjust it. So the Ektar photo you'll see on this side is much more magenta, and the photo on this side is much more green. And you're probably saying to yourself, I don't see any green in this. Well, when you go on the spectrum between green and magenta and you're working with skin tones, the more magenta you go, the more red the skin tones look, and the more green you go, the more peachy they look. Ektar is a much redder film at its core, so I just have to move the tint slider towards magenta. So just a little bit towards magenta. I'm going to bring the exposure down just a tiny bit, and there. I mean, that's almost identical. Let's see. I'm going to bring the temperature down just a little bit. So I'm just going to bump around between temperature, tint, and exposure until we get a match. So yeah, that's about how easy it is. And originally, a long million years ago, that was my benchmark for presets. Was a lot of people say that they have film presets or they make film presets, but literally nobody will show it actually compared to real film. Or they will have some kind of disclaimer in the About section saying, your results may vary, it doesn't always match, blah, blah, blah. That was just not really good enough. Hey, Jake, how's it going? Thank you for the heart there. Tell your friends to watch. Come on, let's get this over 20 people. So let's see here. I'll give you another example from the same shoot. Grab that. I'm going to go to the Ektar folder here and grab another one. Do you remember the name of the girl, the surfer girl? in the shoot?
No.
Darn. She was really cool. All right, so Ektar on the left, a Canon file on the right, and I'm just going to go through that process again. So apply Ektar, and then adjust the exposure and move the tint slider towards a red a little bit. Let me see here. Yep, that's about it. Very, very simple. I'll go to, let's see, let's try a different shoot here. Let's see, this one, I don't know, this is not so exciting. I'm going to find something with people in it. I like people. I bet you like people. We're going to go to people. No sneezing. I'm a cruel, cruel person. All right. Where is that photo? All right. Grab these in our quick collection. So what I'm doing is I'm just selecting a few photos and hitting B, and that puts them in your quick collection. I'm going to reset all of the settings for this photo so we can start fresh. I think I was using, I think I was playing around with that photo with a different preset. But on this one, we're going to do Portrait 400. This was shot by John Duenas, a really amazing photographer in Portland, Oregon. I highly recommend you check out his work. He's great. J-O-N-D-U-E-N-A-S. John, J-O-N, John Duenas. Super great photographer. All right. Oops. No. 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 Sorry, I am trying to reset this photo back to its absolute basic set here. All right. So we got Portrait 400 on the left, and we've got the raw digital file on the right. Okay, we got proofing turned off. Okay, great. So the photo on the left, I think, was shot with a Pentax 6.7 camera. You can see the shape of the image. It's almost like square. And you know, on the right is a 35mm camera. That's what most of us shoot with. So it's a much taller vertical image. I love the 6.7 format. If you have a chance to ever try a 6.7 camera, it's a really great camera. It's awesome. The Pentax 6.7 is a great camera, and the Mamiya 7 is a rangefinder 6.7 camera, and that camera is really sweet too. I have both. They're both great. Not too expensive either. But let's grab Portrait 400. And we're going to be working on the photo on the right. That's the digital file. So there you go, Portrait 400. And then I just need to warm it up a tiny bit. And it needs to go a little bit green. And how do I know it needs to go green? It needs to go green. I'm looking at this area back here, and I'm trying to get that matched up. It's like the coolness of this aloe plant and also this gray wall. So there you go. That's it. Simple, very, very simple. If I wanted to give the image a little bit more pop than it has, the one on the right, the digital image, we also include these things called tone profiles. And they're actually taken directly from the Fuji Frontier scanner. And what they do is they take an image and they split it kind of into two tonal sections. There's highlights. So every photo has highlights, midtones, and shadows, as we all know. What the scanner does is that it separates out the highlights and shadows and lets you either recover those areas or make them more contrasty. And they have these wonderful Japanese translations, like names for them, but they are all hard, meaning it will take the highlights and the shadows and make them both more contrasty. That makes the entire image have more contrast. There's all soft, which will take the highlights and shadows and try to get as much detail out of them as possible. So if you have all soft turned on, that's as close to getting to HDR as you can get on a scanner. And then there's highlight hard, which makes just the highlights have a lot of contrast. There's highlight soft, which brings back detail in the highlights. And I'll look up like a wedding image with a dress or something and show you how that works. Then there's shadow hard, which makes just the shadows deeper and darker. And then there's shadow soft, which just recovers the shadow detail. So on this image, the film one has a little more contrast in the highlights than the digital one. So what I can do is just do highlight hard. Or actually, I'm going to do all hard. All hard. And you'll notice that like her shoulder and like a little bit of her face got a little bit brighter and the shadows got a little bit darker. And that is a better match than not doing that. So it's just a small tweak. Another thing you can do is you can, again, if you are shooting side by side, it's a great way to learn. But if you are, you can look at the grain. And I know that this is a medium format photo, but we also include grain. So 35mm grain and medium format grain. The difference being, as you get a larger negative that you're shooting on, the grain is going to appear finer because it's in relation to the size of the negative. So like a 35mm frame is going to be much grainier because the grain never changes across the different types of the different formats of film you shoot. The grain is always the same size. But the canvas that it's on, the actual negative changes. So like on a medium format film, like 120 or 220, the grain is going to be very fine because the negative itself is so big. So to match it even a little bit more, I could use the medium format grain option, and that adds just a tiny little bit of grain that's the same size, shape, and density as the film image. Very like nitpicky, not that important, but if you want to go there, you can. It's actually really cool. All right, let me get a few more here. I'm going to find some wedding images. Let's see here. Go into the archives. No, we were just there. Yeah, this could be a good one. Okay. Who was this sent in by? Gosh, I feel like such an a-hole that I don't know. This is one of our testers. I apologize if I'm not naming you by name, but we have so many images that people have submitted that I can't keep track of it. Anyway, let's see. So let's grab this one. This is a Nikon file, and this is Portrait 400 push one stop. And I'm going to grab the film, the same film. Let's see here. I'm going to reset these so that we're not comparing apples to apples. The digital one is the one I wanted to reset. Okay. All right. So on the left, we've got actual Portrait 400 push one stop. And on the right, we've got a Nikon file from let's see what camera it is. Maybe it'll tell me who shot it too. This is a D810. Oh, there's no copyright info. Okay. There's a D810 and then actual portrait film. So for this, I'm going to go get the portrait pushed. Apply that. You'll notice that it seems really contrasty and really dark around the edges. That's because I also need to apply lens correction on. What this does is it compensates for the vignetting and the distortion in most lenses. So almost every lens made, the manufacturer, or maybe it's Adobe, they create like a lens profile for that lens so that you can activate, and it gets rid of the vignetting, which is the darkness around the sides, and also any distortion. Super important if you want to try to match a film image, because most medium format cameras, let me grab one. Okay, so I've got a Pentax 645. This shoots a 645 frame, which is really big. It's like the size of this back. Whereas a, 35mm camera's got, oh, I shouldn't do that. It's got a frame that's about the size, a little bit smaller than this AirPod case. When you're shooting a much larger film format, the lenses that they make are of much higher quality because they've got so much more space to work with. And what that does, and this is a very small lens actually for a medium format camera, but the glass in here is really well corrected. So you don't have so much vignetting and distortion. And that's really important if you want to get a good match. You got to remove all of that. So we've included lens correction options here that do that all automatically for you. And it evens out the exposure across the frame. And that is one of the only ways to get an accurate medium format film match look. So yeah, I applied the preset, did the lens correction. The white balance is totally not correct yet, but we will get a match after I fix that. And I will show you highlight soft. So the digital image on the right here is way too red. So I'm just gonna add some green with the tint slider and increase the exposure a little bit to make the density between her face here and her face here roughly the same. And then, let's see, then I'm gonna need to do one more thing in a second here. So her face is kind of hot, like on the front, and her dress is. So to get that contrast under control, like in the highlights, I'm going to do highlight soft, and that just brings that down. So it's a very subtle change from this to this, but what it does is it flattens out those highlights without really affecting the midtones and the shadows as much. It's really important. Let's see here. Yeah, that's about it. Show you a before and after. So that's the same image before and after that edit, and that's only like 3 or 4 clicks. That was apply the preset, do the lens correction, turn that on, and then adjust the temperature and tint, and then do highlight soft as kind of a finishing touch. I could also add grain at the end. Since it was a medium format image, oops, I'll show you. Since it's a medium format image, I'm going to tell you right now that the correct grain is going to be the medium format one. So a very small change, but a good one. And that's that. Does anyone have any questions while I'm going through this? It's been very question-free so far. I think maybe there's not that many people in this community that shoot film yet, which is why this may feel like it doesn't really apply to you, which is fine. But my advice is if you do get into shooting film and you love that look and you want to get that look for your digital, one of the best things that you can do right off the bat is start shooting film also. even if you never intend on shooting that for your clients, because it is more expensive, it will change how you work. It'll change how you think when you're shooting. It's like going to the gym for photography. It makes you slow down, it makes you visualize. But what it also does is that it starts to recalibrate the way that you edit, the way that you see color, so that you would get something that looks like film. For example, I wouldn't know right away that this looks like Ektar. I would never probably edit her this way because I would be looking for like a different skin tone or something. However, if you started shooting a lot of Ektar, you would know that it looks like this. Okay, she's a little out of focus in this test shot, but you get the point that that's how Ektar looks. You're not always trying to correct back to this, because that is not how Ektar looks. This is how Portra 400 looks. It's a much more muted film. Most of the Portra films, I mean, for example, they have a lot of green in the base. They are great for Caucasian skinned people, not so great for people with darker skin. But you could only really learn that by shooting film or by the stuff that we try to teach you through Mastin Labs. But anyway, it's a really good exercise to kind of train your eye to, see what film looks like. Shay says, I shoot film. Awesome. Great. That's really good. I created Mastin Labs originally just to get more people, beyond matching my own stuff, just to get more people to shoot film so that film would not die. So I'm glad that you're shooting film. Okay. So keep shooting. Like, always keep shooting. We want you to keep shooting. We want you to shoot film. We've got some courses on shooting with film cameras, free ones. If you're interested, just Google easiest film course in the world, for lack of a better name, but it seems to do pretty well. And we will do everything we can to help you shoot real film. Okay, so I've got a few questions here. Lauren Janoski Choi says, what film cameras do you suggest starting with? Okay, hold on one second, I'll show you. Let's see here. Yeah, this is a good example. Okay, I'm back. So I think this is one of the best ones you can start on. This is a Nikon F100. It's got everything you can need. It's as solid as a tank. It has really nice ergonomics, and it uses your existing Nikon lenses. So it's a no-brainer. It's a 35mm camera. You won't, I mean, it's like using a D810, except you have less crap to have to deal with, like less options and raw settings and all this other BS. It's just shooting, and you will understand how to use it. This is a great way to start. If you have Canon lenses, then I would recommend a Canon EOS 3 is a really cool camera, or a Canon 1VR. Is that what it is? It's the one I used to use for the newspaper. That's a great camera. It's a much taller camera. It's got like the little battery pack in the bottom. Great camera. Any of those are great to start with because you can use your existing glass. That's my advice. If you have Nikon though, no doubt the F100 is a great camera. Also, you might have a grandparent or somebody who has an old like silver manual camera, like a Canon AE1 or something, or a Pentax K1000. Those are like everywhere, and they're great. They're still great. They make great images. The film is the sensor. The film doesn't care what camera it's in as long as it has decent glass. So almost anything you start with is going to look good. Shay says, I shoot on a Pentax ME Super. Oh, I love that camera. That's a sweet camera. Pentax also made one called the Pentax MX, and it's like the smallest 35mm film camera I've ever shot with. I love that thing. It's like smaller than a Leica. It's great. Jenny asks, I shoot Fuji 400H, and I'm having a real hard time to match my digital images, especially blue and green tones, because I always aim for the peachy skin tone. Okay, so it depends on how you're shooting your 400H. If you're shooting it just like 2 stops overexposed, that's kind of where I recommend it. So pretend it's like an ISO 100 speed film. Then it's going to be pretty easy to match. If you're going over that, say you're overexposing by 4 stops, it's really popular right now to take your light meter and put the bulb in and the meter like in the darkest part of the shadow of somebody and then overexpose 2 stops over that. That puts you like 4 stops overexposed. And when that happens, you're starting to introduce a lot of pink into the highlights. So the problem with that is that you're no longer really in the realm of matching normal Fuji presets. However, in the Fuji push pack that we made, I tried to address this by making the Fuji Push Plus 2 preset. I modeled that after overexposing like 6 stops, like for that super peachy skin tone. So that is my suggestion for you, is to try the Fuji 400H Push 2 stops, because I made it to emulate that super, probably too overexposed look for people that like that. I like that look too. I think it's really cool. I hope that answers your question. If not, come find me in the Mastin Labs community, and we can take some of your images and I can show you, how I would approach editing them to get a perfect match. I hope that helps. Oh, and Jenny says, yes, 2 stop-ish overexposed. So that could be the problem. I don't know if you're using Mastin Labs or VSCO or some other product to match. They're all going to be a different Fuji 400H emulation. And I'm gonna say ours is going to be the best match if it's scanned on a Fuji Frontier. That's the other thing too. If you're having trouble matching something, make sure that where you're getting your images scanned, like the Film Lab, is using a Frontier scanner. There's a big difference between a Frontier scanner and a Noritsu. Totally different color look. So some people like Noritsu, some people like Frontier. In general, I think Frontier is the best. It just gives you nice, clean, neutral colors, a lot of 3-dimensionality in your photo. It's just classic. The Noritsu gives you redder shadows and a very flat image. You'll get like red shadows and kind of red highlights. I don't care for it, but some people work it into their look and it looks really good. Okay, thanks for using Mastin Labs, Jenny. Yeah, come find me and we'll work on that. And once you get the hang of it, it's easy, and I'd be happy to help you. Okay, it is 1:43. I've got time for maybe a few more matches. There's not a ton to show you because the system is so simple. It's just apply the preset and then adjust temperature, tint, and exposure. You'll notice that I have all the other panels closed, and that's because you don't need to mess with them to make it work. Okay, I think my AirPods are going in and out of working. That is not a good sign. Come on, Apple. Let me turn my Bluetooth off here so my phone isn't trying to fight for them. All right, there we go. Oh, geez. Can you guys hear me when they turn off? Maybe I should just take them out. All right, we're going naked. Ah, man, those AirPods. We like went almost an hour and they didn't have any problems, and now they're just like being big piles of poop. Okay, let me find another thing here. All right, let's do some Portrait 160 push 2 stops, shall we? Let's see what we got here. Let's grab that one and that one. Are those ones similar? Oh, here we go. These are very similar. Okay, that one and that one. So these are Portrait 160, push 2 stops. These again are shot by John Duenas. Highly recommend checking out his work. I think you'd dig it. And on the left, we've got, Portrait 160, push 2 stops, shot on a Pentax 645 in his studio. And then on the right, we've got a Canon 6D RAW file. So let's see. So we're just going to apply a portrait push 2 stops to the one on the right. And that, again, shifts all the contrast and the colors into the general area that they need to be. And then from there, it's just some exposure and temperature and tint adjustments. So it's going to go down in exposure and a little warmer. And actually a little bit of green. Yep, okay. So that's that. And I'm gonna also do all hard. Yeah, okay, I gave it just a little more pop. And then medium format grain. And that's it. Maybe a little more green. You can get like, I mean, if you want to, you can get like really in the weeds here if you want to, you know, get it down to like exactly matching. And it will. It's just a matter of like squinting and looking back and forth and being like, okay, it needs to be a little bit more green or a little bit more magenta. And then you can dial it in. But the majority of it is really simple. It's just apply the preset, get the temperature and tint and exposure like in the ballpark, and then you've got, you know, something really nice you're working with. Yeah. All right. If people don't have any more questions, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to leave it on this slide here where I show that the exposure that you take the photo at does not matter. But thank you for joining us. We're really, really happy to be doing these lessons in Build and Bloom. It's really nice to see the work in there. We are mostly in the wedding world in Mastin Labs right now. We've got people that do all kinds of stuff, but we have a lot of mostly wedding imagery that comes through, which I love. But it's really nice to see all kinds of imagery outside of that, and especially in Build and Bloom. So keep up the good work. If you have any questions about film or about matching digital film or anything else, feel free to ask. You can also drop a raw file in the Mastin Labs community, and you'll have probably like 20 people jump on it and edit it for you with any preset you like, so you can see how it looks if you want. Or we can give you help on using our presets or anything else. So feel free to join us, and I will also be hanging out with you guys in Build and Bloom. So yeah, I guess that is it for today. Thank you very much.